Hey guys, John Soul here. Welcome back to the channel. This will be part 2 of my fishing trip from Easter Sunday. Gosh, it's probably about a month ago now. First part of the video you saw was cranking shallow water early. After the sun gets up and that bite dies down, I usually move out to about 10 to 20, 25 feet of water and drag some baits around. Before we get into the fishing part of it, I'm going to explain to you what my Carolina rig setup is. For those of you that watch me fish or fish with me a lot, you know that I use the Carolina rig a lot. I have a ton of confidence in this bait. I probably catch 75% of my fish with the Carolina rig. And this application and everything about it is very specific to what I want to do with this bait. Everything from the rod, the line setup, the weight, the hooks, the baits, etc. Let's start with the rod. I originally bought this rod as a frog rod, but after using it with the Carolina rig, I really like the way that it works for this application. This is a Lews 7'6", heavy power, fast action. It says it's a fast action, but this rod barely bends. I mean, it bends a little bit at the tip. It's got a ton of backbone on it, and the reason that I want to have something heavy is because I use a heavy weight. And I want to be able to set the hook and drive that hook home on hook sets on a long cast. I can cast a mile with this rod, 7'6", cover a ton of ground with it, and I really like the way that it works for this Carolina rig. For the line, I use 15-pound fluorocarbon, Seaguar invizx. I've gone through a lot of different combinations of mono, braid, fluorocarbon main line, and different types of leaders and that kind of thing. I use 15-pound Seaguar invizx fluoro for both the main line and the leader that I use for this. It's got no stretch, well, less stretch than mono, not as much as braid, but I've got tremendous sensitivity with this, and I really like the abrasion resistance. I'll be fishing around rock piles in 10 or 15 feet, and a bass will pick my bait up and swim it around some rocks. And when I go to set the hook, a lot of times I was breaking off with braid, and this stuff really holds up well. And anything that's sharp, any kind of structure, I break off a lot less. Actually, if I get hung up, sometimes it's hard for me to break the line. This stuff is super strong. If I'm caught up with the hook and not the weight, I'm typically bending the hook out before I'm breaking the line. So usually use somewhere for the weight, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce if there's absolutely no wind. Most of the time I'm using a 1 ounce weight. And some people think that's a little bit too heavy, but there's 2 reasons that I really like this 1 ounce weight. And again, casting distance is key. I'm fishing deeper water. After that morning bite, I'm moving out. I want to fish unpressured water. I want to fish away from all those bank beaters that are sitting there throwing their line, throwing their bait up, just working their way along the bank. I'm fishing main lake points, drop-offs, rock piles, shelves, that kind of thing. And I'm really focusing on those less pressured fish. And I think that's in deeper water a lot of the times. I also think I get a better quality fish, a better grade of fish when I'm fishing that deeper water. So I want something that's gonna keep that bait down, dragging on the ground, kicking up dirt, and all of a sudden that bait comes off behind that and the fish pick up the bait after the weight comes through. The other reason I'm using a really heavy weight is I'm fishing in any kind of wind. If you're fishing a Carolina rig, I'm dragging it and I'm letting it sit. I'm dragging it and I'm letting it sit. And I'm getting bit when that bait is completely still. Okay, they don't hit it when you're moving the bait. They hit it when it's sitting there still. And if that wind is blowing a bow in your line, it's moving that bait. It never really gives it a chance to sit still. So a lot of times I'm not getting bit as much if that bait isn't completely sitting still for at least a second or 2. So I really like that heavy weight. Again, I'll drop down to 3/4 ounce if there's no wind. Sometimes, rarely, I'll up it to 1.5 ounces if it's really windy. Typical bead, and swivel, nothing really fancy or different there. I've got a really specific hook that I like. I use the VMC 3/0 or 4/0. It's extra wide gap worm hook. It's light wire, so I get great hook penetration. And if you guys have ever seen a stick bait, a Senko, and when it flutters weightless or wacky or whatever, that light wire hook allows that bait to stay natural and do a little bit of shake and shimmy as it's going down and falling down. You know, if you're dragging that Carolina rig down a really steep bank, it's up in the air and then shimmying down, you drag it and then it shimmies down, and it's really got some great action to it. The other thing I really like about this VMC hook is the eye of the hook is completely closed with a resin. It's gonna be too hard for me to show you on camera here, but I'll put a link to everything that I'm talking about down in the description of this video. A lot of times I'd be fighting the fish in, and after I land them and unhook them, I'd see that the knot of my hook is in that little gap from where the eye of the hook is bent around and connects with the shaft. There's usually like a little teeny gap there. And I was noticing that that was causing nicks and compromising my line. It gets stuck in that little gap, and I'd have to retie more than I would like to during the day. And having that resin and that eye completely closed so that there's no way for that knot to slip down into that little crack, I really like. I think that's probably one of the best hooks that I like for this application. And the baits that I like to use, most of the time outside of Lake Fayette, I'm using a Zoom Lizard. Color I really like is pumpkin with a chartreuse tail. And believe it or not, at Fayette, my best bait for a Carolina rig is some kind of soft plastic stick bait. I go with Young Dingers because I think they work just as good. I think they last a little bit longer and they're not as expensive. The colors that I really like, color called Elder's Magic. It's a two-tone color, and then black and a blue flake. And I typically buy those in 30 packs. I like them so much. So check out the second half of this video here. I hope the tips that I give you will make your Carolina rigging a little bit more effective. You can catch a few more fish. I don't catch anything real big during this video, but I did catch a lot of fish and I had a lot of fun. As always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Skinny little 1.5, 1 3/4. About 2.5, 3. 2.5.